Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of DCS World. I know it's been a minute, but today we are back and we are going to be discussing how to export your screens to either other displays or even onto unused areas of your monitors. If you are interested in acquiring any of my OverKills tutorial guides for Microsoft Flight Simulator, please consider joining me on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides, as well as any future updates and future guides that will be coming down the road. Link to Patreon can be found in the description below. All right, my friends, so let's jump right into it. So first thing, a couple things that we're going to talk about here. First, I have a very large, it's a super ultra wide primary display. It is a 5120 by 1440 display. It is a 49-inch monitor. Now, how I use this is I actually only use 2560, or let's see here, about 2560 by 1440 of my display when using DCS. So I can use the both left and right side of the actual, we'll call this the camera. Okay, the display that you are currently seeing right now, if you're watching this video and you're interested in displaying what you're used to seeing, is your camera. We're going to call this the camera view. Your main camera view is everything you see when you hit escape and you go into the menus. It is everything that you see when you first load into the cockpit on your primary display. When you look around inside of DCS, you are looking at the camera view. Okay, it's important to distinguish that because, for example, we're going to use this as a view port or view display. Okay. So let's first draw out the necessity. Your step one to any of this. Let me see if I can make this bigger. I don't think I can. Maybe a little bit. That helped kind of, huh? Your first step is to determine what resolution you're going to be using and entering inside of the DCS World configuration in order to properly set this up. DCS, the way we're going to do this is we're not going to identify two different monitors. We're going to create one giant box of resolution. Now, I am not going to be using monitor 2. This is a 4K monitor that I have up above my primary display. But if you wanted to, we can. I'll talk about how in a minute. The first thing you need to do is establish your horizontal display. Our horizontal display is going to be monitor 1 plus monitor 3. So monitor 3 has a horizontal length of 1280 pixels. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get our calculator here, and I'm going to do 5120 plus 1280, and that gives us a total horizontal resolution of 6400. Now you can see that monitor 3 here is smaller than monitor 1. So for monitor 3, I don't care what the vertical is because you're always going to pick your largest vertical state. So monitor 1 is my largest vertical state of a total of 1440 pixels. So we are going to be creating a display range of 6400 by 1440. Okay. Now this is very important to understand how this works, because if you create in our config file, which we'll go over in a minute, if you create or add anything into this range here, DCS will create it, but since there isn't a monitor there to display it, it won't be there, and you're not going to understand why. The next thing we're going to talk about is where is, if this is our 2560 mark, or actually this is the 1280 mark, okay, and this is 5120, it's important to understand where all these counts start. Your vertical and horizontal positions start in the top left corner. The top left corner of your primary display or whatever display is at the far left, I should say. Let me rephrase that. Whatever display is at the far left is where your zeros start. The top left corner of your furthest left display is going to be 0 and 0. X is going to be your horizontal, so X0 is up here. And Y is going to be your vertical axis, and 0Y is also in the top left corner. Counting down to 1440 will be your Y at the very bottom. So 1440 will be right down here. And the horizontal 5120 will be over here. Or in our case, the 6400 would be here. Okay. So hope that makes sense. We have our total 5120 or 6400 all the way at the top right corner of monitor number 3. And we need to remember this is going to create a solid box. The bottom of 1440 would be right here. So 5120 1440 location would be in the furthest bottom right corner, right about where my mouse is. Okay, it's really important to understand how that's drawn out before we move any further, which is why I sort of hung on this for a minute. So if you wanted to add, for example, this top monitor, this is where things can get a little confusing. So I do recommend, as much as you can, keep things in a horizontal view. Okay, I am not going to be using monitor 2, but if you wanted to, you would, since the 5120 is larger than the 3840, this is a 4K monitor here. Since the 5120 encompasses the 4K, we don't have to worry about adding anything more horizontally, but we do have to add things in vertically. So it would be 1440 plus 2160. You can see here, 3840, 2160 is the vertical height of a 4K monitor. So we would take the 1440 plus the 2160 to get your total vertical space. Now this can make things a little bit tricky when it comes time to, add in your viewport. Because if you wanted to, for example, what I would do here is, if I was going to use number 2, I would put the number 2 monitor right here. DCS knows this build. It knows where the monitors are. Okay, so if I wanted to add both of these monitors, but I wanted my viewport or my main camera to be on monitor 1 like I showed you earlier, I would have to go first count down. Our y-axis would actually start at 2160 at the bottom of the 4K monitor. So our starting location would be 2160. We would move into 1280, and then I would draw a box 2560 by 1440, or actually this wouldn't even be 1440. This would be whatever the total distance between here and here were. So just keep that in mind. Hopefully this will make sense as we start building things in. Again, I am not going to use monitor 2, but one other scenario here is maybe you want to do something like this. Okay, then it would be a total distance of 3840 plus 5120 plus 1280. But let's say you didn't want to go below the 1440 line. You could do a vertical resolution of 1440, and it would cut everything on the bottom of this monitor would no longer be displayed. So you could have, maybe some other apps running in this very bottom side here. But it will draw a box that would look like this. Okay, and it would cut that bottom section off, or the top if you wanted, however you wanted to do it. But I'm just going to go ahead and hit cancel, leave things as they are. This is the range that we're going to be working with. So again, we're working with 6400 by 1440, which is the total horizontal of the 2 monitors and the maximum vertical depth. Okay. All right. So now let's move on to our next step. The next thing that we're going to do is you're going to go to your saved games DCS directory, whether it be DCS open beta, stable, doesn't matter. And you're going to go into the config. Now, if this is your first time doing any kind of monitor export, there's going to be a folder here that is missing. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder, and you're going to title it exactly as you see it here. Capital M, monitor. Capital S, no space, setup. Okay, we're going to need that. And this is where we're going to put our custom config files in here in just a minute. Okay, oops, didn't mean to close that. The next thing that you're going to want to do is take your options Lua as it is right now and do something like this. You see, I've renamed it to options old.lua. This will make DCS ignore this file. Okay, we don't want it to, and you can just do a copy paste, even if you do something like this. If you just go to copy and you paste it, DCS will ignore this and you will have a backup. All you would have to do is take everything from the Y all the way up to the S out, and it would re-import it after you delete this one. Okay, if you are ever in a situation where nothing you do works, and we'll talk about some possible caveats and some things that break some things later on at the end of this video and how to recover some of those things. But if you ever just run into a problem where no matter what you do, the config file isn't resetting, you can simply delete the options Lua, restart DCS, and it will recreate it from scratch. Okay, now you have to reconfigure your settings, things like that, but you're not just stuck in the dark. Now I'm going to delete this one because I already have a backup of my current one. Okay, so we are now ready to start talking about how to start exporting our MFDs. Now, we are only going to be working with the left and the right MFD for right now. This will work for the F-16. This will work for the F-15. This will work for, actually, disregard that. It may not work for the F-15. I actually haven't tested the FC-3 aircraft. But this will work for the F-16, the A-10, the F-18. Trying to think of any of the other aircraft that have multi-function displays in them. Okay. And we'll do more tutorial series on different aircraft as I test them. I have just about all the aircraft, but I can verify functionality right now with the F-16, F-18, and the A-10. And that is the new version of the A-10, the A-10C2. So now what we're going to do is in the description, guys, you will find a file. Let me pull up your template here that I have created for you guys. That looks like this. Okay, this is what it's going to look like. Now you will probably see it in quotations. Okay, you will probably see something like this. First thing I want you to do is you can copy this out, put it into a notepad, and take those quotes out. Do that and do that. Again, if you are trying this, take the beginning and the end quotes out. Okay, I don't know if the YouTube description at this time will let me copy those in as such. So the next thing that I would recommend doing, we're just going to, don't save. Next thing I recommend doing is downloading, Notepad++. So go to edit with Notepad++. You can see this looks a lot cleaner. Okay, it looks much cleaner. So the next thing that you should see is down in the description. I have included a template. It will look like this. Okay, now make sure that you only copy from the start of this hyphen right here. If there is anything before it, quotations, anything like that, do not copy it. And you want to go all the way to center. And if it is not highlighted as you see right here on the screen, do not copy it. This is exactly how it should look. Any extra spaces, any periods, any extra quotation marks, anything like that, and you will break the script. All right, so now with that in mind, let's talk about first what each of these lines are. First, this name line. You can see here that I have this titled as YouTube template. However, from OverKills template is what DCS World is going to see. Anything that is inside, you can see there's an apostrophe or single quote here and here. Anything inside of here is what DCS is going to see. So when we go into our menu later to select the export file that we wish to use, this is the name we're going to look for. So again, the file name up here has absolutely nothing to do with what you will see inside of DCS. And the description is really for your own benefit, but if you mouse over it, it will actually tell you the description. And we'll see that later on. The next thing that you're going to want here is we have our left MFCD, we have our right MFCD. This is the exact format we're going to want, but stand by, we'll come back to these two in just a minute. Remember I told you our camera view, okay? And I was describing how I use my particular view, how I have a 2560 by 1440 display, and this is what I use to actually use my camera, but that it doesn't start over here, it starts right about here. This is how I determine that. 1280. 1280 pixels in from the far left. This is where I want DCS to start the main display camera, okay? And then I want it to go 2560 pixels from there, and then 1440 down, and everything inside that box is what I want to see DCS displayed in, which means that everything on the right and the left of that box is completely blank out in black, okay? So that's how I establish that position. The starting X position is 1280 pixels in from the far left. I wanted it to start at the top of the monitor, so I used the 0 indicator, okay? And hopefully these tips help. The X is the horizontal starting location of the main display. Y is the starting vertical position of the main display. And then once I've picked my starting location, how big of a box do I want it to draw? 2560 by 1440. The final last thing that you're definitely going to need is the aspect ratio. If you were to have the 2560 by 1440 but don't have the correct aspect ratio in, everything may look squished, it may look skewed, it may look really stretched, it'll look weird. You'll know right away if your aspect ratio is wrong. The size of the screen may absolutely be correct, but you'll notice that something is absolutely off about it, okay? I just realized that my mouse isn't showing up on Notepad++. That's weird. So, all right. So something you can do one of two things here. You can type 2560 divided by 1440, and that will work. That is one way that you can enter in. If you want to be very precise, what you can do is take your calculator, and this works for any display, and we can type 2560 divided by 1440. There is your aspect ratio. Control C, copy that in, and you have your aspect now set. All right, so now we are ready to start configuring our script. Now we are going to start with the right MFCD. So what I want you to do is on the template that I provided for you guys, if you're using that, or you can type it in as such, is we're going to take the 2 hash marks out. Anytime you take the hash marks out, it will make the line active. If you want to remove an active line, you just put the hashed marks in, and anything that is grayed like this will be ignored. So we're just going to do like that. There we go. So now we're using our right MFCD. Now where do we want it to start? We want our right MFCD, come back here, to start directly after this line. Okay, now remember, don't worry about the separations or anything like that. And physically, by the way, you can have these monitors wherever you want. The actual monitors, I could put screen number 3 behind my head if I wanted to. I don't know why you would, but you could. We don't care about that. Obviously, you can move them around as you choose. In case anyone dares to ask that question, I'm going to announce it anyway. But we want our right MFD to start on screen number 3 here, and which means we want to start at the 5120 line. So our X position, we want that camera to begin being drawn at 5120. Next is the Y position. Where do we want it to start vertically? Well, just like with the primary display, we want it to start at the top. So at Y, we're going to still start with 0. Now, just a heads up, if you have your monitor set up something like that, okay, that is not 0. You will have to account for this vertical change. Keep that in mind, please, okay? Just wanted to make sure to point that out. That would be like you'd be starting, I don't know, again, when we did our configuration, you'd have to add that vertical separation in. That's why I always recommend trying to keep things lined up. Okay? All right, so coming back here. So we're starting at 5120. Then our X is 0 here, okay? And the size of this monitor, we're just going to go full screen for now, is 1280 by 720. So the width for it will be 1280, and the height will be 720. And at this point, we can now save our configuration. And then what you're going to do with our configuration is, this is the one we're using right now. We need to go back to our saved games directory. And we need to go to the config file. We need to go to that monitor setup folder. And we're going to take this file and copy it in. Okay, and at this point, we're going to start DCS. Okay, now at the moment, you can see things are very skewed right now. You are actually seeing a full 5120 by 1440 screen squished into a 25 by 60 recording window. And that is because even though we've created our export, now we need to set DCS up for this. So the first thing we'll do is change our resolution. And you can see that we should have, there is our 6400 by 1440. Remember, that's what we were using. It is a configuration in Windows, and therefore DCS sees it. And then next thing we need to do is come down, and there is our OverKills template. Okay, so we're going to, under resolution, select the desired resolution that you have created. And for the template, we need to go to monitors, and you can see OverKills template. And now we're going to press OK, and DCS will restart. All right, so now that should look significantly better for you guys. So now we're going to go to Mission, I'm going to pick my Hornet. And we're just going to load up a quick test mission here. Pick an air start so that way it's already up and running for us. I'm going to kill the audio. It's late at night here. And let's set the autopilot here so she doesn't crash into the ground. All right. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a display here for you guys. And I can expand that. This, what you guys are seeing here, is on, let me see if I can move my mouse there. There we go. This is on this little display that I was showing you guys earlier. So it has been successfully exported to the full screen. Now, it's really important to remember, guys, that if you're using a touch screen monitor, you're not going to be able to touch on these locations and control the screen, okay? All that we have done here is successfully exported the visuals. You have no interaction from the screen, whether it be from a mouse or from any kind of touch screen or anything like that. Also, if it is a touch screen and you touch it, it's going to move your mouse to that screen. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, this is where something like Helios can come into extreme help here and help you create profiles, and we'll be going over that later because Helios sees the resolution significantly different and can be extremely frustrating to figure out as far as the resolution. For example, when we created this screen here, this was at 5120, right, is where this top location was, where in Helios this would be like 3000. It's really, really odd. I have not figured out how Helios does it. So, but we will definitely be going through that. I'll be breaking you guys through on how to create those scenarios. Now, remember, if you want to do like the Cougar MFDs from Thrustmaster, maybe you want to tape one or build your own box where it sits over these positions. You will definitely want to go back into your configuration and reduce the size and make like a custom window. So to do that, I'll show you guys real quick how we would do that. So if you bought the Cougar MFDs or had your own MFDs, and let's say those MFDs, they took up a space that looks something like this, right? Okay, and then you had your buttons, your OSBs were like right in here, and so your viewport was only like right in this window here. Okay, what you would simply do is come back to your config file, and you would need to move the starting location. Okay, oops, dang it, didn't want to do that. Give me a second here. You would move the starting location so that way it was starting here instead of up in the top left like it is now. Remember, this is 5120 X and Y 0. Okay, but if your view started here because of your MFD, you would have to calculate where this would be and on both the horizontal and the vertical. And some of the times it's just a guessing game, guys. It takes a few times. And what you would need to do is change the values in your config file, hit save, relaunch DCS, and then rinse and repeat until you get it down. But you'll find that once you get more comfortable with it, you can start breaking it down, and if you're pretty good at math and pretty good at guesstimating, you can narrow it down pretty quickly the first time around. But anyways, guys, and then you would do the same thing for the left MFCD. If you're interested, just remember to remove the 2 hash marks. Anything in the gray is ignored. I hope this tutorial helps you guys. I know this is one that comes up quite a bit. I have been wanting to do a lot with it. For anyone who is familiar with Space Desk, okay, Space Desk provides you the ability to connect wireless devices such as tablets, maybe any other kind of Wi-Fi device, cell phones. I'm trying to think about what else would be other than a tablet. But for an example would be like an Android tablet like I have. You can use Space Desk. You download Space Desk on your computer. You download Space Desk on your tablet. You run it. They connect to each other. You activate it. It is a freeware. There is no charge for that software. And then it would, once connected, whatever your lap or tablet or whatever would actually show up as another display here. And then you just rinse and repeat the process. The process is no different. Just remember that if you try to connect DCS using the same export file and one of these monitors is missing, you're going to have things get screwed up and DCS isn't going to like it. Okay. So just be ready for that. It doesn't break anything. At the end of the day, you just need to make sure to reconnect the monitor or adjust your config file. And this is why I do recommend storing multiple config files. Now, as far as these files here, like we've done here, the template, you can store, we can have a ton of these in here. Like my actual directory has, I think, 5 or 6 of them, based on all the different testing I'm doing, different devices I've been messing around with. So you just have to select the correct one once you actually get into DCS and make sure that your resolution matches what is currently available in Windows. Okay, so those are really the only catches here. If you guys have any questions, of course, as always, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on Discord. The link to it is down in the description below. That is probably the best ways, guys. Please don't rely on the YouTube comments for me to respond. It's hit and miss whether or not I see it. Obviously, you guys know that if you've been watching my channel for any length of time, I pump out a ton of videos, and all those videos get comments and commentary, and chances of me catching every single one of them are quite frankly slim. Patreon subscribers, feel free if you guys are interested in supporting the channel or interested in any of the guides. Patreon is another great way to reach out to me. It may take a day or two for me to respond, but I do respond. Same thing with email. And the links to all of these can be found on the description down below. So feel free to reach out if you guys have any questions, and I'll do the best that I can to help you through any of this configuration. But I hope this has given you guys some cool ideas on how you can expand your flight simulator cockpit. You can do this for relatively cheap. Again, you can use old monitors. You can use tablets, all kinds of different stuff. The one thing I will say about using Space Desk is that I would not rely on it very heavily for things like the targeting pod, because of the latency involved in transmitting that visual over the Wi-Fi. Can create some pretty significant delay. However, if you can use USB tethering on an Android device, I'm assuming Apple has something similar. If you do something like that where it's connected via USB 3.0, again, you can still use Space Desk and the tethering in order to do it. And that does create a much smoother experience, although you may still see some latency spikes here and there, but it's not near as bad. It does make the TGP or any kind of moving radar or moving screen a bit more feasible via Space Desk. But I do recommend, whenever possible, using direct connections via HDMI or display. Well, guys, I think that's about as much information as I can pack into this one. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Let me know if you guys are interested in any other configuration parts that I can possibly help with. We will be doing a part 2 where we talk about Helios, and then some other tips and tricks that I have found along the way. But I wanted to get the basics of this out. Again, as always, guys, stay safe and healthy. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next one.